Hello and welcome to this digital skilling session where we're going to talk about managing and securing apps and devices for a hybrid workforce. My name is Sean McLaren. I'm a senior program manager in our endpoint engineering team, and I'm joined today by Mo Salah, a senior program manager and modern work architect.
Hi everyone, happy to be here with you today.
So in this session, we'll look at how Microsoft Fast Track services can help you enable remote and hybrid work for your entire workforce using Microsoft 365 technologies. Fast Track is an organization comprised of Microsoft engineers who provide best practice guidance around adopting and deploying Microsoft 365 cloud services. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. We're also going to look at provisioning and managing both remote and corporate devices as well as personal devices. We'll look at deploying Microsoft 365 apps, including Microsoft Teams, and enabling collaboration for our workforce with things like voice, chat, meetings, and more. We'll also look at securing and protecting our remote workers' identity, the corporate data they have on those devices, and the device itself. Let's take a deeper look at Microsoft Fast Track. Fast Track is a set of advisory services straight from Microsoft Engineering to help you deploy and adopt Microsoft 365 technologies. We can help you with configuring identity, security and compliance, cloud management. We can even help you adopt Microsoft Teams for chat, meetings, voice. We can look at deploying Windows 10 devices through services like Windows Autopilot, Microsoft 365 apps, the new Edge browser, and more. We can even help with data migrations and application compatibility with services like Microsoft Aperture. When we think about remote and hybrid work and the new challenges that this brings to IT and the change that comes along with those challenges, there's a couple of different areas that we'll focus in on. We look at problems that are occurring now, such as VPN scalability, getting people remote who are as productive and collaborative as they used to be, helping to manage remote devices that may be outside of our firewalls now, securing the identities and the data that's on those devices. And we know we're seeing more and more attacks exploiting vulnerabilities that are targeting remote workers. So we also need to be able to protect against those. So focusing in on three transformational areas, we'll talk about managing remote devices, including personal devices. We'll talk about apps, collaboration, and productivity, and security and compliance. And let's look deeper at the technology underneath each one of these areas and enable some of these functionalities. And to do that, I'd like to ask Mo to run us through managing remote and personal devices. Mo?
Thank you, Sean. As Sean mentioned, let me walk you through some key capabilities that the Fast Track team can assist you with when enabling remote and hybrid work scenarios. We know a major challenge of managing devices is the different panes of glass required to administer. We also know that you have a multitude of devices to choose from and to manage. You have PCs, Macs, and mobile devices in one place. Anywhere they are, especially in a moment of a crisis where everyone is working remotely. So we created Microsoft Endpoint Manager with that in mind. Microsoft Endpoint Manager is an integrated solution for IT admins to help you understand and take action across all of your endpoints anywhere they are. It allows you to manage all your endpoints and apps from a single pane of glass. To achieve that, we have brought together the on-premises capabilities of Config Manager with the cloud-native benefits that Intune offers, and all of that grouped into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. It also allows you to extend the on-premises infrastructure with cloud security. It helps you manage Config Manager enrolled PCs over the internet, and last but not least, securely enable personal or corporate-owned devices to access resources remotely, and most importantly, offers secured access through conditional access. At Fast Track, we will work with your teams to assist in the planning and the enablement of Microsoft Endpoint Manager, as well as the setup of Cloud Attach with your existing Microsoft Endpoint Manager Config Manager infrastructure. With the crisis happening so quickly and the shift to remote work as quickly, getting new devices to workers who need them is vitally important. And this becomes challenging to manage, especially when your IT technicians and administrators are also working from home. At Fast Track, we can help your teams to adapt to that new reality by working with your IT teams in enabling what we call zero-touch provisioning or zero-touch deployment. With zero-touch provisioning, you'll be able to remotely provision and deploy new devices remotely. Working in concert with your hardware vendors and the capabilities built into Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Microsoft 365, you can deploy leveraging zero-touch provisioning. And this applies not only to your Windows devices, but also to your Android and your iOS devices. Then what you can do is simply to dropship those management-ready devices directly to your remote users, bypassing the traditional imaging-based deployment. Direct ship devices will be then self-deployed by your workers and up and running with the right configuration straight from the cloud, with the security controls that you require and also the different applications and configurations you use within your organization. This saves you a significant amount of time compared to traditional IT deployment and provisioning. Another interesting option to consider is providing your remote workers with access through virtual desktops. It allows your workers to safely and securely access their applications and resources from any device, corporate and personal, and anywhere they are. Windows Virtual Desktop is a comprehensive desktop and application virtualization service running in Azure. It uses Azure Active Directory Identity and Access Management Service to secure the access, and it provides virtualization infrastructure as a managed service, enabling you to scale up and down depending on your needs in that situation of remote and hybrid work. And it also lets you manage with your existing tools that you've already invested in, such as Configuration Manager and Microsoft Intune. The Fast Track team will work with your teams to help you plan and enable Windows Virtual Desktop to your hybrid workers. Now let's take a step back and look at all of the apps that live across your environment. We've heard from many customers that a big challenge is providing a single place for your application where your employees can discover, download, and manage the apps they need to do their daily work. Beyond software as a service applications, we know that many companies use installed apps or other legacy applications, so having that single place and single pane of glass is important. At the same time, we know from an IT perspective that you want to be able to manage app usage and have the necessary controls to protect apps and data. As Sean will show you later, we will show you some cool capabilities within Microsoft Endpoint Manager on how to secure access and protect the information residing within your apps. Here again, we provide you with a couple of options that allow you to provide a centralized place where users can discover and adopt the applications they need to do their work. And moving forward with Microsoft Endpoint Manager Config Manager 2006, you will be able to offer available Config Managers applications directly on the Intune My Company portal as available applications, making an analogy with what you used to have with Software Center on premises. Making sure all of your devices and applications are up to date during a crisis such as a pandemic is critical. We know it's challenging to remotely maintain and manage the device and app lifecycle. So from an operating system perspective, you can manage operating system updates on Windows PCs and Mac operating system, and also set the update policies for supervised mode in iOS and iPadOS devices. For Windows 10 PCs, you have the option to configure immediate, automated, or prompted updates, especially important in times like where we don't want to affect workers' productivity by an unexpected downtime. Think of a healthcare worker receiving an update during an important healthcare intervention. Also, by implementing co-management in Microsoft Endpoint Manager Configuration Manager, you can transition the update management to Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Windows Update for Business, and offload the network traffic on your core network infrastructure. At Fast Track, our teams will work with your IT administrators to put in place that stay current strategy in order for your end users and your devices to stay current, protected, while they are away from the office. So with all of those capabilities shared with you, let us show you some demo on how it looks like from an end user perspective. So we will show you user-driven Active Directory join device deployment, leveraging zero-touch deployment in Windows Autopilot. What will happen is that the remote worker will receive a box with their device in it. They unbox it, plug it into the network, and then the experience starts. First of all, they get asked a couple of questions about the language. As you can see, they connect to the network, and then from there, they are asked to enter their credential. We can force them also to use MFA or also use passwordless signing through the Microsoft Authenticator app. Once that happens, the device reboots one time, and then the experience starts. As you can see, the device gets enrolled into Microsoft Endpoint Manager Intune, it gets secured, and then what happens is that we start configuring the device portion. Once that happens, we start pushing the end user configuration. Configuration could be a set of policies, a set of certificates, a VPN profile, it could be a security baseline, and also a set of applications. Once that happens, the end user gets access to their desktop, and then you can see that they have access to their collaboration tools such as Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Edge, and they also have access to their files downloaded directly from the cloud, leveraging the OneDrive for Business non-folder move and sync. In addition to offering a stellar device deployment and configuration experience, we have to ensure our people and workers can be productive while working remotely. That includes making sure they have the right tools in hand. At the core of the information worker productivity, we find the Microsoft 365 apps and services. They help your users craft and collaborate on content. They are integrated with your identity and information protection services and are monthly updated with security and update features to protect your users and unleash the latest and greatest in terms of productivity features and capabilities. At Microsoft Fast Track, we will assist you to deploy and upgrade the M365 apps from existing Office perpetual versions. We will assist you also in setting up your servicing process for Office applications, and we can also support with application compatibility through the App Assure program. In addition to the M365 apps, Microsoft Teams is your hub for teamwork. Let's take a look into how Microsoft Teams can support your remote workers. With Microsoft Teams, your users can participate in interactive online meetings wherever they are and from a multitude of devices. They can make calls inside the organization and are also able to make those calls outside with either local calls or worldwide calls through calling plans. They can also collaborate with both people inside the organization, but also with external partners. They can leverage co-authoring, and last but not least, they are empowered with business applications and processes straight from within the Microsoft Teams client. At Microsoft Fast Track, we will help you enable Microsoft Teams for your users and also work with your teams on Microsoft Teams adoption. Another important application in a hybrid work environment is the browser. Microsoft Edge, powered by Microsoft Bing, is a browser and the search engine for your business. Microsoft Edge has world-class compatibility and performance, since it was built on top of the Chromium standard, but also supports IE11 and legacy Edge websites and applications. Edge has security features you know and trust from Microsoft. Through the integration with Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Information Protection, and core Windows 10 security capabilities, such as Smart Screen and Application Guard. It is simple to manage through the different updating channel, but also through the set of policies and security baselines we offer within Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And most importantly, it becomes your browser for productivity. It has built-in PDF capabilities. You don't leave Edge to open legacy websites and leverage Bing to search, not only within the internet, but also within your local sources or within your SharePoint online sources. At Fast Track, we assist you with the planning and the deployment of Microsoft Edge and Bing, but we don't stop there. We also assist you with compatibility readiness for Microsoft Edge and legacy websites through the Microsoft App Assurer program. So we look together at the device configuration aspects, but also at the collaboration aspects when dealing with remote workers. Now, let's get back to Sean, who will walk us through some security concepts.
Thanks, Mo. Great stuff on device management and productivity. Let's take a look at security. Security really begins and centers around identity. With Azure AD as our identity store, we can allow access and gain single sign-on to not just the Microsoft cloud, but to any of the thousands of SaaS applications that we have pre-integrated in to Azure AD. We can also get single sign-on access to on-premises and legacy applications, as well as your own cloud-hosted apps. Through Microsoft Endpoint Manager, we can even configure per app VPN and allow access there with single sign-on capabilities. Getting access is just the beginning, though. We really know we want to use multi-factor authentication everywhere that we can. So with Azure AD MFA, we can protect your identity using things like Windows Hello, FIDO V2 tokens, push notifications into the Microsoft Authenticator app, and we can even use SMS or voice to get that second factor of authentication. With things like Windows Hello, we'll take this a step further, using a biometric to unlock that credential that we'll store on the TPM in the Windows machine. We can actually stop a pass the hash attack, as well as providing the best user experience, allowing us to use MFA everywhere and keep our users happy. The next piece of the puzzle is conditional access. So conditional access allows us to use signals that come from our devices, our applications, or even the real-time risk associated with a sign-in, and decide what type of access we're going to allow to our applications. We can limit that access, or we can all-out block access. Now, when it comes to the devices that we're accessing corporate data and information on, especially our mobile devices, which play an even more critical role now with our hybrid workforce, we have different choices that we can make about how we'll manage that device. We can choose to manage at the device level using mobile device management, or MDM, which allows us to use things like conditional access to help protect access to those applications and that data. It does require us to fully enroll that device, but allows us to report and measure on the device compliance, configure all types of application settings and profiles and certificates, and we can remove our corporate data from that device when it's unenrolled. The other option that we have is mobile application management. With mobile application management, we only manage the applications on the device, not the device itself. We still have the ability to push applications to the device, configure those applications, even report on application usage, but again, without enrollment. We can use things like conditional access, and using things like Intune app protection policies, we can actually stop a copy and paste from a corporate boundary into a personal boundary. All of this integrates with Azure Information Protection to allow us to protect our data no matter where it travels. Cloud applications have taken on an even more critical role in the way people work remotely. With more and more access to applications that are outside the firewall, we need to discover and protect these applications as well as the data that lives within them. With Microsoft Cloud App Security, we're able to monitor sessions in real time, and if malicious activities occur, we can actually stop them. In the particular scenario outlined here, I have access to a third-party application from an untrusted device. Based on the fact that I'm on an unmanaged device, I'll rate the session risk, and I can then decide what type of access I want to allow to that application. In this particular example, we're going to allow viewing and editing in that application, but we're going to not allow a file download for our corporate data to go onto that unmanaged device.
So let's take a look at a real-world scenario. We'll do a little demo on remote or hybrid work, specifically protecting corporate data as it's used in Microsoft Teams. We know with more people working remotely and working from home, they're using Teams for chat, for meetings, for voice, but they're also collaborating around corporate documents within Teams, and we need to protect those. So we're going to use Cloud App Security DLP policies in combination with Azure AD conditional access policies, and we're actually going to set up policies to block file downloads onto unmanaged devices. So here I am logged into my Azure AD admin console. I'm going to click on my enterprise applications. I'm then going to go to my conditional access rules that apply to those applications. Now earlier I created a session control policy for Office applications. So let's drill into that and see what it looks like. In the applications that I'm actually protecting, I'm going to be going after Office 365 apps. You can see this includes Teams, Exchange, SharePoint, and Yammer. I'm going to look at the conditions that I'm putting on those, specific to client applications. So I want to watch sessions that have to do with the browser, mobile apps, desktop clients, and other clients. I'm going to go ahead and grant access to this application, but I am going to require multi-factor authentication. This helps me secure my identities and stop those pass-the-hash attacks and make sure my corporate credentials aren't being used by anyone other than my employees. Now in the session controls for these applications, we're going to use a conditional access app control policy that's actually set here to be a custom policy because we want Microsoft Cloud App Security to actually take this policy over. You can see this policy is enabled, so let's go ahead and jump over to the MCAS portal to see what we've got set there. So now I'm in the Cloud App Security portal. When I look under my control policies, we'll go ahead and search for a policy that I created earlier specific to blocking Office downloads. So here's the policy to block Office 365 file downloads for unmanaged devices. When you look at what I have set here, this is a DLP policy where I'm controlling file downloads, and the applications that I've chose to control those for is OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, and Microsoft Teams. Now you can see here, I could also do this for internal web applications and even third-party SaaS applications that I have integrated or federated with Azure AD. I'm looking for devices that are compliant in Azure AD joined, meaning if you are on an unmanaged device, you'll go ahead and fail this policy. So if you do fail that inspection, we're actually going to block the download of file, and we're going to monitor your activities on that device. And we're even going to customize the block message that the employee will see. In this case, we've typed in here that the download of corporate information on unmanaged devices is prohibited. So let's see this policy in action. We'll transition over here to an unmanaged device where I'll go ahead and log in as one of my employees. We'll enter our username and our password. And our multi-factor authentication policy kicks in, and we need to approve this login in the Microsoft Authenticator app on our phone. So we'll go ahead and approve that login and continue to log into the application. Now with this screen here, what you can see is the Microsoft Cloud App Security is actually monitoring the session that I'm in. Right? And as an admin, I can turn this screen off if I wish to provide a little bit better experience, or I can leave it on. If I leave it on, the employee can actually hide this notification for up to a week. We'll just go ahead and continue into the Teams app. Now in this particular case, I'm going to use the Teams web app. So imagine I'm working remotely and I choose to do this from my personal PC. So I've logged into the Teams web app. I can still chat with my team, I can collaborate, I can even do voice calling. Now going to files that I've been working on and accessing those files, you can see here I have this product release information doc. Let's go ahead and pull that up. So within this document, I'm able to gain access to it, and I can even edit it. But what happens when I try to actually download that document? So we'll click on the download button. And being as we're on an unmanaged device, our policy has kicked in and actually blocked the download of our corporate data onto our personal or unmanaged device, further allowing us to protect our corporate data no matter where it's used, but not blocking the productivity of our employees when they're working remotely.
I passed my checks with conditional access of using multi-factor authentication to get into that application, but I failed the managed device test. That allowed me to actually still work, but it prevented me from downloading that corporate data onto a device that we don't trust. So as we look at protecting our corporate data, we need to protect that corporate data no matter where it lives. So in this hybrid world, we need to protect data not only in the cloud services, our third-party applications, but even our on-premises data. With that, we can use labels and data classification to streamline how we protect that data and use intelligence around how we want to handle that data based on where it is and where it's going to be used. We have over 90 sensitive information types with dynamic protection actions that we can take. We also have the ability to even block Teams messages that contain sensitive information. Through things like policy tips, we not only block this data, but we can also help to educate our employees on what policies exist around that data and how to share and collaborate around it appropriately. So let's look at another demo. In this one, I want to focus on attachments coming into the environment. So we'll look at a policy called safe attachments to help us protect from malicious attachments that come into the environment. We're also going to look at a policy called safe links. Safe links actually does URL rewriting to help us do time-of-click protection, and then we're going to see the integration with that in the smart screen in Microsoft Edge. So here, I have a threat policy in Office 365 that's going to help protect us from malicious attachments. We'll drill into the settings in this policy, and as you can see here, I'm actually going to replace the attachment when I find a malicious attachment, but I'm going to go ahead and deliver the message anyway. I could choose to block that message entirely. I can even choose to redirect this attachment to my security investigation teams if I want to. Then we choose who we apply that to. In this particular case, we're going to apply it to everyone in the organization. We'll go ahead and save that policy, and that'll help us protect against malicious attachments. Now, in addition to that policy, I want to configure a policy for safe links. So again, another threat policy type within Office 365. So we'll go ahead and look at the settings for this policy. We'll drill in here. We're actually going to be rewriting URLs for things that come in messages, but I'm also going to enable it for Microsoft Teams. We're going to do real-time inspection here, and I'm even going to include internal messages between employees within my organization. I'm also going to make a decision here not to let my users click through that link and go to the original source. Again, we're going to apply that to everyone in the organization. We'll go ahead and save that policy. So let's see what that policy looks like in action. So here's a message that came in, and as you notice, this message is asking me to update some of my personal information. Common phishing attack. So to protect me at the time of click, we have URL rewritten, or we have rewritten this URL, and we will do a check against the threat assessment of that at the time that I click it. A common phishing attack is to send a link in that actually points to a good URL originally. This will pass all of our initial threat checks, but then the actor can change that link on the back end later on to point somewhere malicious. Without time of click protection, I would be vulnerable to that. But when I click on this particular link and we check it at the time of click, you can see I get the Microsoft Defender Smart Screen in Microsoft Edge that has popped up and told me that this site has been reported as unsafe. So we know it's a phishing site. We're going to stop our employees from going to this site and block that malicious activity from occurring in our environment. Now let's look at protecting our Windows 10 endpoints. Built into Windows 10, we have industry-leading threat and malware protection. It's behavioral-based, real-time protection. It protects against file-based and fileless attacks, and we can stop malicious activity from trusted and untrusted applications. You can even use application reputation and the knowledge of the Microsoft Security Graph to help with this. With Defender Advanced Threat Protection, we have full enterprise EDR capabilities for threat and vulnerability management. We can do automated investigation and remediation, and we can even set policies through Microsoft Endpoint Manager that help us with things like attack surface reduction. So in the particular policy you see here on the screen, I'm choosing to do things like not let Office macros call into Win32 API calls or start child processes. I can block obfuscated scripts, which is a very common attack technique, or I can even block all executable downloaded scripts onto the machine, making that machine much safer. Now, when we think about our devices, protecting the device with a combination of hardware and software is extremely important. This helps us to defend against firmware level attacks, which Spectre and Meltdown made us aware of how important that really is. So with Microsoft Surface, we have Microsoft built and developed UEFI that is managed by DFCI, or Device Firmware Configuration Interface, directly from Microsoft Endpoint Manager and updated through Windows Update. This helps us to minimize that risk by allowing us to keep our firmware up to date and protect against those latest security threats. But on the machine, it provides firmware level protection against unverified code, identity protection, and helps us really secure that device. From the OEM side, we have a Secured Core PC. Secured Core PCs are our most secure Windows PCs ever. where we also have this firmware level protection against attacks. We also have these devices shipping with all of the security services enabled, things like virtualization, so I can instantly enable Credential Guard, Application Guard, and other services which take effect without the device even needing to be rebooted. So if you think about that device deployed via Windows Autopilot, that or a Surface device, I'm instantly protected from all these things as soon as I set that policy down on that machine. We hope you've seen how Microsoft 365 can help to enable your remote and hybrid workers, helping people to collaborate and be productive on any device, anywhere, securing remote access to those applications that they use, whether they're Microsoft Cloud applications, third-party SaaS applications, or even on-premises legacy applications, and managing all of this with Microsoft Endpoint Manager. We've also seen how you can use the combination of hardware and software to create a more secure device. Earlier, we talked about Microsoft Fast Track and how you can gain assistance directly from Microsoft Engineering to help you adopt and deploy Microsoft 365 cloud services. In order to do that, we'll actually go through a planning and assessment phase with you, where we'll learn more about your environment and jointly together come up with a plan that aligns to your goals to help enable these technologies in your environment. We even have migration assistance and adoption assistance if needed. When it comes to application compatibility, we have Microsoft Aperture. Aperture not only deals with compatibility on Windows 10, but we also look at things like Microsoft 365 apps, website compatibility in our new Microsoft Edge browser, and compatibility as it relates to Windows Virtual Desktop. So we have you fully covered. Let's talk deeper about some actual customer examples of how Fast Track engages. To do that, I'm going to ask Mo to describe some of the work that he's done with his customers and the types of things that help them to enable M365 technologies. Mo, can you tell us a little bit about some of the customer activities you've had?
Sure. Let me tell you about a customer transformation we helped with a couple of months ago. As our CEO Satya mentioned in one of his interviews, at Microsoft we've witnessed 2 years of digital transformation happen over a course of 2 months. Well, with this customer, Sean, we've witnessed 5 years of digital transformation happen over the course of a weekend. When COVID-19 hit and we were asked to shelter in place, the customer clearly started to feel the limitation of their on-premises infrastructure when it comes to VPN and to their web conferencing solution. They reached out to their account team and started engaging with us as a Fast Track team. The work we've done in collaboration with the customer teams was to enable them on M365 and 1,000 Surface devices dedicated for those remote workers.
Wow, that sounds like a great application for Windows Autopilot.
Spot on, Sean. The devices were being shipped to the end users. The customer decided to go with Microsoft Autopilot. So we were pre-configuring all the settings on Microsoft Endpoint Manager. We were packaging the applications and then pushing everything through the cloud to the device itself. On top of that, we secured the devices with Microsoft Defender and core Windows 10 security capabilities, as well as Microsoft Defender ATP. And since this was a regulated industry, we've also leveraged Azure Identity Protection and Information Protection to secure the access to Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Edge. In addition to that, we've assisted the customer to enable Microsoft Teams, Microsoft 365 apps, and Microsoft Edge. With the assistance of the Microsoft Aperture team, we've also helped the customer in remediating some application compatibility issues with some of their legacy websites.
Wow, so this really is a great example of how our Fast Track engineers, as well as yourself as their architect, and even our Aperture teams, really stand shoulder to shoulder with the customer as they go through these configurations and enable these services in their environment.
Yeah, Sean, that's exactly it. As for any technology transformation project, we help the customer initially to gain confidence and technical knowledge with the Microsoft 365 capabilities and features. And then we started helping them into building their technical building blocks and remediate any challenges they would have with the technology. Once that happened, we identified a couple of IT users and some business users to test the solution. And then once we had a plan and a working recipe, we worked with their teams to scale it to the 1,000 users on those 1,000 Surface devices. So the users were using M365 collaboration solutions on those Surface devices, but also were using VPN to connect back to their on-premises services and applications. So as you can see, Sean, this is a great example of how Microsoft Fast Track works with the team at the customer and then help them to envision, enable, and adopt Microsoft 365 technologies. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you for having me today, and off to you, Sean.
It's a great customer example, Mo. Thank you. So we hope you've seen how Fast Track can help to enable your remote or hybrid workforce and also help you adopt Microsoft 365 cloud technologies around managing remote or personal devices, securing and protecting corporate data and identities, or even deploying Microsoft 365 apps and teams to enable collaboration and productivity for your employees. You can learn more about Fast Track at Microsoft.com/Fast Track. You can also request assistance from Fast Track at aka.ms/Fast Track RFA. You can even request assistance from our App Assure teams for compatibility assistance at aka.ms/App Assure request. Thank you for joining us.